Welcome to the deep dive. We're here again, taking source material that you've shared and really digging in, trying to unpack complex stuff, find those nuggets that, make it click.
Help you get informed fast. That's the idea.
Exactly. And today we're looking at excerpts from Master Ching Kung. He's explaining Master Ouyi's commentary on the Amitabha Sutra.
Right, a very influential commentary in the Pure Land tradition.
So our mission, our goal for this dive, is to really get to grips with what this specific explanation says about Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. What is it? How do you get there according to this teaching?
And why it's framed as such a unique and supreme destination. There's a lot packed in here.
Definitely. So let's unpack what this dive into the source reveals.
Okay, so where do we start? I think right at the beginning, Master Ouyi makes this really foundational statement.
Yeah, it feels like the bedrock, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He says, faith and vow are wisdom, chanting the name is true merit virtue. Simple, but profound.
It really frames the whole thing immediately. It tells you this isn't just blind faith or empty chanting. It's presented as a complete path, cultivating both wisdom and, merit or virtue. Siwun, as they say.
But then comes the part that, according to this explanation, was kind of revolutionary for its time. Master Ouyi's big contribution.
Yes, this stark distinction he makes. He says, and the source really highlights this, attaining birth in the Pure Land depends entirely on having faith and vows.
Entirely. Just those two.
Just faith and vows for getting there. Full stop. That's the ticket, according to this view.
Okay, wow. But then...
The rank you achieve, your level once you're born there,
Yeah.
that depends entirely on the depth of your chanting practice.
Okay. So entry is faith and vow, but your starting position, your grade, that's the chanting.
Precisely. And the source emphasizes this separation was Master Ouyi's key insight, something not maybe articulated quite so clearly before him.
And I like how that, it cuts through that potential misconception. People might think chanting is just, mindless repetition.
Right, lacking wisdom.
But here, the teaching flips that. It says the very choice to believe, to have faith, to vow to go to the Pure Land, that itself is the highest form of wisdom.
So, okay, if getting born there hinges completely on faith and vow,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean? Genuine faith, genuine vow.
Yeah, because the source implies, a lot of people think they have it, but maybe don't. It sounds like it's way more than just thinking, yeah, Pure Land sounds nice.
It seems to demand this deep, sincere belief, absolutely. But also a true willingness, a profound desire, a readiness to actually go, to leave this world behind.
And they offer that test, right? It feels a bit confronting, actually.
It is. Ask yourself, if Amitabha Buddha appeared right now and said, okay, you're coming to the Pure Land tomorrow, would you be scared?
Oof. Yeah, that hits home. If the first feeling is fear, panic about leaving.
Then, according to this teaching, your faith and vow aren't genuine yet. It might be mouth good, as the source puts it.
Yeah.
The words are there, but the heart isn't ready to let go.
So what stops us? What's the big obstacle to that genuine readiness?
Well, the source points to the usual suspects, but maybe amplified. These incredibly deep-seated afflictions and habits we've carried for, beginningless time.
Greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance. The classics.
Exactly. Those are the poisons.
Yeah.
But the root cause, the specific thing tying us to this world, the Saha world,
Is attachment,
Us-
right? That heavy lock.
intense love, intense affection, not just for people, but for things, for experiences, for this whole messy, familiar world. The source quote is brutal. If love is not heavy, you are not born in Saha.
Wow.
And the teaching is uncompromising here. That attachment, that deep love for this world, must be cut off if you genuinely want to be born in the Pure Land. It's the fundamental block.
Okay, so let's assume you manage that. You have the genuine faith and vow. You get the ticket. Now, the chanting depth determines your rank or experience there. How do we even gauge depth? It's obviously not just counting beads.
Definitely not. The source is really explicit about this. Chanting thousands, even tens of thousands of times a day, it can be completely useless if the quality isn't there.
So it's all about the quality, the effectiveness.
Exactly. The measure is, does your chanting actually subdue the afflictions when they pop up? The greed, the anger, the wandering thoughts, the anxieties.
While you're chanting?
While you're chanting, yes. If you're chanting Amitabha, but your mind is simultaneously worrying about bills or planning dinner or replaying an argument, that chanting isn't effective. It's not penetrating.
That phrase they use is so vivid. Shout till your throat breaks. It's in vain.
Right. It makes it crystal clear. Just making the sound isn't the point.
So the goal is what they call one-pointed chanting. practical way.
Yes. Mind focused solely on the name, no second thoughts, no distractions, no afflictions bubbling up during that time, which, let's be honest, the Source acknowledges is incredibly hard for most of us.
So how do you even start? Is there a practical tip?
Well, the Source mentions a method often taught in this lineage, the 10 recitation method. It's designed as a way to train that focus muscle, even for just a minute or so.
How does it work?
You basically take a deep breath, calm yourself, and then recite Amitabha 10 times, clearly, continuously, focusing entirely on the sound and the name. Just for those 10 recitations, it takes about a minute.
Okay, short bursts of intense focus.
Exactly. It's a manageable way to start practicing that principle from great strength bodhisattva. Gathering the 6 roots, pure recitation continues. You're trying to pull all your senses, your whole mind, onto just the recitation, gradually learning to quiet the noise.
Okay, so you practice, you develop faith and vow, you hopefully get born there. Now, how is your actual attainment or rank described once you arrive? You mentioned 2 ways.
Right. So there's the kind of traditional understanding based on your own effort, the depth of your practice before you died. This leads to the classic 9 grades, from lowest to highest.
Okay, that makes sense. Your effort determines your starting point.
But then there's this other layer, which the Source presents as the really, truly amazing part, the effect of Amitabha Buddha's own power, his empowerment, his Jichi.
And what does that do?
This is where it gets, frankly, incredible. The teaching says that anyone born in the Pure Land, no matter what their initial grade based on their own flawed practice, is immediately elevated by the Buddha's power to the status of an avignata bodhisattva.
Okay, what does that mean practically? Is that a high level?
Extremely high.
Yeah.
It means achieving the 3 non-retreats. You won't fall back in your level, your practice, or your understanding. You're logged in, essentially.
And how high is that compared to, say, the usual bodhisattva path?
The Source equates it to very advanced bodhisattvas, maybe 7th, 8th, or 9th ground bodhisattvas, or even what's called equal enlightenment, just one step below full Buddhahood.
Whoa. So even if your own practice only got you into the lowest grade, you arrive and boom, you're instantly operating at this incredibly high, non-regressing level because of the Buddha's help.
That's the promise highlighted here. Your own effort determines the, let's say, the quality of your lotus flower and how quickly it opens, but the status and the non-retreating nature are granted by Amitabha.
So that's why it's called an equal Dharma realm, because everyone gets this fundamental boost.
Exactly. Despite the initial differences based on personal practice, the Buddha's power creates a baseline equality of status and opportunity that's just extraordinary. Everyone gets access to the best possible conditions for rapid progress.
This brings us back to that idea of true practice, or chanting from the heart. That character, it's more than just reciting, right?
Much more. The Source breaks down the character. It's to the present mind. It means the Buddha has to be truly in your mind right now.
So your heart, your mind, is genuinely filled with the Buddha. No room left for, well, for junk, for wandering thoughts, worries, afflictions.
That's the ideal, yes. To have the mind correspond with the Buddha.
And how do you cultivate that kind of mind? The Source recommends starting with a specific text, doesn't it?
Yes, reading the Immeasurable Life Sutra. It's presented as the cornerstone text for Pure Land, the big picture, the net land overview.
Why that sutra specifically?
Because it contains the whole story. Amitabha's journey as a bodhisattva, his 48 vows that created the Pure Land, and detailed descriptions of the land itself and the beings there.
So reading it isn't just academic study.
Not at all, according to this teaching. The whole point of reading it repeatedly is to deeply understand and internalize Amitabha Buddha's own heart, his mind of compassion and wisdom, his vows, his understanding, and his practice, his susanta.
And the goal is to make your heart, vow, understanding, and actions match his, to correspond.
Precisely. That correspondence is true chanting, true practice. The Source has that powerful line. One thought corresponding is one Buddha. Every thought corresponding is every Buddha.
Meaning when your mind aligns with the Buddha's qualities, you are connecting with Buddhahood in that moment.
Yes. And chanting without that correspondence when the mind is elsewhere, that's just mouth good horse. It looks and sounds okay, but it lacks the power to transform you or subdue those afflictions.
And this connects to seeing the Buddha. That quote about recollecting Buddha, chanting Buddha, in the present or future, you will certainly see the Buddha.
Right. Seeing the Buddha in the present isn't necessarily a full-blown vision. The source gives the example of maybe seeing your lotus bud appear in the Pure Land pool during deep meditation or chanting. It's a sign of that connection, a present taste of the future reality.
Okay, let's talk about the Pure Land itself. It's called Utmost Joy. Why that name?
Because, according to the Sutra, it's a realm completely free from suffering. Only joy exists there, no suffering whatsoever.
Which is a stark contrast to here, right? Our Saha world. Suffering seems, well, baked in, even if you're rich and powerful.
Exactly. The source explains suffering here arises because we're constantly creating negative karma, even unintentionally. It even uses a modern example, like environmental problems, say, the ozone hole mentioned in the commentary, as a sign of this world's inherent imperfection, tied to our collective actions and mental states.
But in the Pure Land, beings are joyful but don't create bad karma. How does that work? Is it boring?
Apparently not. They don't create bad karma because their minds are constantly engaged in wholesome activity. The source describes it as continuously reciting or being mindful of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
But interpreted differently there, right?
Yes, interpreted as being constantly mindful of enlightenment, rightness, and purity. Their entire environment and mental state are geared towards purity and awakening, so enjoyment doesn't lead to negative consequences or disasters.
And this setup leads to incredibly fast progress.
Unbelievably fast, because there's no backsliding, no distractions like here. The source says you could potentially reach Buddhahood in just 3 or 4 great kalpas, which sounds long, but is incredibly fast compared to the usual path.
Why so fast?
Because you're constantly surrounded by and learning directly from Amitabha and countless other Buddhas and high-level bodhisattvas. It's the ultimate spiritual university.
The physical descriptions are also pretty amazing. Transparent ground, gold pathways.
Yes, the ground like crystal or lapis lazuli, paved with gold. And everything described in 7-fold railings, nets, trees.
What does the 7-fold signify?
7 often symbolizes completeness or perfection in Buddhism. The source also suggests these features might represent the 7 categories within the 37 aids to enlightenment, the core curriculum, if you will.
And the materials gold, silver, lapis, crystal, the 4 treasures, they mean something too.
They symbolize the qualities inherent in the Pure Land and attained by its inhabitants. Permanence, bliss, true self, and purity. Basically, the exact opposite of the impermanence, suffering, no self, and impurity that characterize our world.
So what fundamentally makes the Pure Land so effective, so excellent, according to this commentary?
2 core reasons are given. First, it's a manifestation of your own purified mind, that principle. Pure mind, pure land. Your effort to purify your mind through faith, vow, and chanting is what actually connects you to and allows you to perceive that realm.
Okay, so it starts with your own mind. And the second reason?
The company you keep. The assembly of sages and worthies.
Ah, right. Being surrounded by all these highly realized beings.
Constantly. Imagine learning directly from Guanyin, Massamaprapta, countless other bodhisattvas day in, day out. The source calls this the real cause or condition for joy there. Because this environment guarantees you won't get stuck, you'll just keep progressing rapidly. It's the ultimate positive peer pressure.
It's even described as the realm of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva.
Yes, sometimes referred to as Jaya, which just underscores its incredibly high level and connection to perfect practice.
You mentioned lotus birth earlier. That sounds intriguing.
It's a key feature. Being born from a lotus flower means bypassing the usual suffering of womb birth and subsequently the ingrained patterns of aging, sickness, and death associated with a physical body like ours.
How is that possible? What creates that kind of birth?
It arises from undefiled pure karma. IGN. Now, normally, creating undefiled karma is extremely difficult for ordinary beings trapped in delusion.
Right.
But the source explains that sincere faith, vow, and chanting the Buddha's name, especially when empowered by Amitabha's vows, can function as this undefiled pure karma, allowing even regular folks like us to achieve this miraculous lotus birth.
And that visual you mentioned, the lotus bud with your name appearing in the pools.
Yeah, it's a powerful image. When you genuinely give rise to the vow to be born there, a corresponding lotus appears. And the more sincere, the more pure your practice becomes here and now.
The bigger and brighter the lotus gets over there.
Exactly. It's like a spiritual savings account, visibly growing, indicating the quality of your future birth and how quickly your flower will open once you arrive.
And when the flower opens, there's that line. When the flower opens, see the Buddha, realize the non-production of dharmas.
Right. This signifies reaching a very high stage of insight within the Pure Land through your continued practice there, realizing the empty, unborn nature of reality. This often corresponds to those high bodhisattva grounds, 7th, 9th.
So you get the initial boost upon arrival from the Buddha's power.
To the non-retreating avignata level.
And then, through your own effort in that perfect environment, listening to Dharma, practicing, your lotus fully opens and you gain that deep personal realization.
Precisely. It's a combination of the Buddha's grace and your ongoing cultivation in an ideal setting.
The way Amitabha actually created the Pure Land is also described in a fascinating way in the Source, not just wished into existence.
No, it sounds remarkably methodical, almost like a divine research and development project.
How so?
It explains that Amitabha, back when he was the monk Dharmakara, studied countless other Buddha lands. The number 21 billion is used symbolically for countless or complete.
Okay.
And he carefully observed them, selecting all their best features, their most conducive aspects for practice, and specifically avoiding their defects and imperfections. He then combined all the best bits into his vows to create his own perfect land.
So it was designed, engineered for maximum spiritual efficiency.
That's very much the sense you get from this explanation, a deliberately constructed, optimal environment.
And specifically for whom?
Specifically for beings whose capacity to achieve Buddhahood is ripening. It's presented as the ideal destination for those who have the aspiration to become a Buddha relatively quickly, maybe even in one lifetime after reaching the Pure Land. It's tailor-made for that goal.
And life there, beyond the learning, it sounds pretty blissful too.
Yeah.
Effortless enjoyment.
Totally. Heavenly music, beautiful sights, wonderful scents, all manifesting naturally, often just according to your thought. There's none of that suffering we have here of wanting things we can't get.
And the travel ability, that sounds like science fiction.
It really does. The ability to travel instantly to countless other Buddha realms just in the time it takes us to have a meal.
Why would you do that?
To make offerings to other Buddhas, to hear Dharma directly from them, deepening your wisdom and accumulating merit. It's part of the accelerated learning process.
And the Source made a point about the distance, right? Visiting 100,000 kodis of Buddha realm.
Yes, that specific number is mentioned because, in some traditions, that's said to be the distance between our Saha world and Amitabha's Pure Land.
So the implication is?
If you can travel that far instantly to visit other Buddhas, you can just as easily pop back here to visit your family in the Saha world to try and help them, or maybe check in on Maitreya Buddha when he appears.
So going to the Pure Land isn't abandoning your family forever.
Quite the opposite, according to this view. It's positioned as the best way to gain the ability and wisdom to truly help them, breaking free from the cycle of losing each other through endless rebirths here.
That's a powerful reframe. And the food-sleep thing.
The Source clarifies they don't actually need food or sleep. The mealtime phrase is just a metaphor for incredible speed. Any lingering habits or thoughts about needing food or rest that newcomers might initially have just naturally fade away as they adjust to the pure environment?
And they can be in multiple places at once.
Yes, that divine power of travel.
Right.
They can manifest countless emanations of themselves to go learn from Buddhas or help beings in other realms, all while their primary consciousness remains right there, learning directly from Amitabha.
To really appreciate why the Pure Land is presented as so desirable, the Source keeps contrasting it with our world, the Saha world.
Absolutely. Our world is repeatedly described as the land of 5 turbidities. Turbid kalpa, turbid views, turbid afflictions, turbid beings, turbid life, and deeply polluted.
And not just physically polluted, right? That's just a symptom.
Exactly. The Source is adamant. The root of all pollution, environmental and social, is mind pollution. That quote again. Environment follows the primary retribution. The outer world reflects the inner state of its inhabitants.
So if our minds are full of greed, anger, ignorance,
then our world will inevitably manifest suffering, conflict, and impurity. The Source identifies those 3 poisons, greed, anger, ignorance, as the engine driving the whole cycle of rebirth in the 6 realms.
and cutting them off is the only way out.
It's the path to transcending the 6 realms entirely. And that leads to the definition of true cultivation or practice.
It's not just rituals.
No. It means actively correcting your wrong actions. Correcting the physical, verbal, and especially mental actions driven by greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, doubt, wrong views, wandering thoughts, discrimination, attachment, all of it.
So chanting or meditating without actually working on changing those inner habits and viewpoints.
Is considered largely superficial in this teaching. It lacks the substance of real transformation.
The source also laments how Buddhism is often misunderstood today.
Yeah, this tendency to treat it like just another religion, often superstitious, people worshiping statues as if they were gods who grant favors if you bribe them with incense or offerings.
How does this teaching correct that view?
It emphasizes that the statues, the images, are teaching aids. They represent the qualities we're trying to cultivate. They're like portraits of our teachers.
So the Amitabha statue
Reminds you of Amitabha's vows, his compassion, his pure land. It prompts you to align your heart, vow, understanding, and action with his.
Ninguanyin.
Reminds you of compassion. Mahastamaprapta, great strength bodhisattva, reminds you of wisdom. And the source connects this directly back. Choosing the Pure Land path is the highest wisdom. Sharing it is the greatest compassion. The statues focus your mind on the practice. They're not idols to be appeased. Back in the Pure Land, the Dharma teaching methods sound, well, amazing. Not just lectures.
No, it's described as this incredibly immersive, artistic, almost high-tech experience. The birds sing the Dharma, the wind rustling the jeweled trees teaches the Dharma, the sound of the water flowing proclaims the Dharma. Everything is a teaching tool.
Wow. And what's the core message being conveyed through all these sounds?
It all guides the beings towards reciting the three jewels. But again, with that deeper meaning, constantly being mindful of enlightenment, rightness, and purity. That's the state cultivated by this constant environmental Dharma teaching. And this whole system, this path, is presented as incredibly effective.
The source uses strong terms. It calls the Pure Land method the first Dharma gate, the primary method all Buddhas use to help beings achieve enlightenment quickly. It's described as ultimate, extremely complete, and extremely sudden.
Those are big claims. It also mentions the 37 aids to enlightenment being taught there.
Yes, that's the classical framework for the path. The source mentions the core groups within that. The 5 roots, 5 powers, 7 factors of enlightenment, 8-fold path.
But it also stresses something often missed, something foundational.
Critically important, yes. The source points out that the Amitabha Sutra text itself, being concise, omits the detailed explanation of the foundational practices that must come before those 37 aids can be truly effective.
Okay, what are these crucial foundations?
First, the 4 establishments of mindfulness. This is the bedrock of insight practice.
What does that involve?
It's about cultivating the ability to see through the illusions we live under. Contemplating the body as impure, feelings as inherently unsatisfactory or suffering, the mind as impermanent and constantly changing, and all phenomena, dharmas, as lacking any inherent independent self.
And seeing through enables.
Letting go. When you truly see the nature of things, attachment naturally loosens. You can let go of clinging to the body, to pleasant feelings, to fixed ideas, to a false sense of self.
Okay, 4 mindfulnesses. What else?
The 4 proper exertions. This is about diligent effort in managing your mind, actively stopping negative states that have arisen, preventing new negative states from arising, cultivating positive states that haven't arisen, and maintaining the positive states you already have. Constant mental housekeeping, basically.
Makes sense. And the 3rd foundation.
The 4 bases of supernormal power. Now, supernormal power sounds fancy, but the source explains it in a very down-to-earth way. It's about achieving a state of genuine contentment.
Contentment.
Yes. Realizing that contentment brings constant joy, the mind finds peace, and the underlying principle is attained. When you're not constantly chasing external things, your mind settles down, you find peace, and you can understand reality more clearly. That inner peace and understanding is the power that allows for deep letting go. The Ouyi scepter symbolizes this as you wish state that comes from turning inwards.
So these 3, mindfulness, exertion, contentment piece, they prepare the ground.
Absolutely. Only then can the 5 roots, faith, diligence, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, really take hold and grow into the 5 powers, making your practice strong and unshakable by external conditions.
This leads to that warning about study, doesn't it? About studying widely too soon.
A very strong warning in the source material. The ideal is focus study and practice under a qualified teacher first. Get a solid foundation, begin to cut off afflictions.
Not just jump into learning about everything. The vow is boundless Dharma gates I vow to learn, right?
Yes, but that comes later. The source warns that trying to learn widely before you have some inner purification, some concentration and wisdom, is dangerous. It leads to what's called knowledge without practice increases wrong views. Dancel.
Meaning you collect a lot of intellectual ideas, but because your mind is still distorted by afflictions.
You just interpret everything through that distorted lens, reinforcing your ego and your misconceptions, thinking you understand when you really don't.
Whereas focusing deeply on one message, one sutra,
Allows you to develop concentration, samadhi, and then genuine wisdom, prajna. And with that real insight, the source claims one sutra penetrates all sutras. True understanding unlocks the meaning everywhere.
Wow. Okay, that really was a deep dive. We've covered a lot ground based on this explanation of the Amitabha Sutra.
We really have. From the absolute centrality of faith and vow just to get there.
Right, non-negotiable.
To the idea that the depth of your chanting, its ability to subdue afflictions, determines your rank or experience once you arrive.
And that incredible picture of the Pure Land itself, not just heaven, but this meticulously designed perfect environment engineered by Amitabha.
Engineered specifically to facilitate the fastest possible path to Buddhahood, accessible primarily through purifying your own mind.
Getting rid of those root poisons, greed, anger, ignorance, which this teaching frames as the source of all suffering, personal and environmental.
That connection is really striking. Mind pollution equals world pollution.
And then there's that combination. Your own effort, your sincere faith, and chanting matter. But it's combined with this almost unbelievable grace, the Buddha's power instantly boosting you to that non-retreating bodhisattva level. It's quite a unique package deal being presented here.
It certainly offers a very specific and, for many, a very compelling vision of practice and liberation.
So as we wrap up, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about based on what we've unpacked from this source.
If this teaching suggests that the real measure of your practice, whether it's chanting, meditation, or anything else, isn't how long you do it or how it looks externally, but its actual power to subdue your inner stuff.
Yeah, those afflictions, the anger that flares up, the craving, the constant mental chatter, the attachments.
How does your own practice stack up when you measure it by that standard? What actually feels different inside, calmer, clearer, less reactive as a result of what you do?
And taking that other big idea seriously, the link between the inner mind and the outer world.
What might actually shift in how you experience everything, how you see the world and its problems, if you truly considered purifying your own mind, tackling that greed, anger, and ignorance within yourself as the most fundamental, the most potent form of environmentalism, the most direct way to contribute to a purer world.